Welcome to the Masters of Wellness podcast. Today's episode, our guest is not only a mentor and a friend, but a true pioneer in wellness leadership. Keith and I first teamed up in 2011, helping to bring the Cooper Aerobics vision to China. With every organization, you have the founders, and then you have the people who get stuff done. And that's us, right, Keith?
Welcome to the Masters of Wellness podcast, your ultimate path to holistic health, wellness, and success. Discover the powerful fusion of Eastern wisdom and Western science, designed to balance your mind, body, and spirit. Our channel brings you holistic wellness practices, effective strategies to boost productivity, and insights on stress reduction and active aging. Join our global community and transform your life with holistic wellness. Cheers to a healthier, happier you.
His leadership, faith, and humor have inspired me and so many others. So welcome, Keith. I want to just start at the beginning now, and I mean right at the beginning, if your memory serves you correctly. Where did you grow up? And tell us about Keith as a kid.
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today. You've been a good friend for many years, and as you said earlier, we've both been through quite a transition in China and here in the U.S. I've enjoyed following you and your career success over the years. It's really gratifying to see someone that you've known for a long time continue to succeed. And that's what I've seen in you. I grew up in South Louisiana in a town, the name of the town is Lafayette, Louisiana. It's in the heart of what they call Cajun country. It's basically it's a French culture there. And when I was growing up, I used to go over to my grandmother's house, who lived in a little tiny town outside of Lafayette. And I'd watch her and her friends create a circle of their rocking chairs. And they'd rock back and forth. And the faster they would rock, the faster they would talk. And they were all speaking French. So it was a very interesting exposure. That area of the United States is more similar to a European culture than anywhere else in the United States. It's very faith-based, very, very family-oriented. Where the people from that culture work hard all week. They go to church on Sunday, and then after church, they all gather. 4 and 5 generations of the same families sit at tables together, and they eat and they drink and they dance. And that happens every week. And it just shows the strong family bond that exists in that culture. And that's done well for me over my life, because I think we have a fairly large family. We have 4 children, 11 grandchildren, and soon to be our 3rd great-grandchild. So with all the kids, grandkids, and their spouses, we have pretty large birthday celebrations. And it's wonderful to see the multiple generations sitting around, talking to each other, sharing their life experiences with each other. It's very gratifying to see.
Yeah, wow. And I know that you've spent a large amount of your career working in business. Do you want to tell us about that?
Well, it's not so much how I got into it, it's how it got into me. A friend of mine I went to university with, at the time, 1 year out of school, I sold life insurance for Prudential Insurance Company. This friend of mine I went to school with bought an insurance policy for me. And at that time, he was managing a office there in town that was in the credit reporting industry. And for about 6 months, every time we'd see each other, he says, "You've got to come to work for me. You've got to come to work for me." So eventually I went to work for him with no experience whatsoever in that industry. But I learned it quickly, and over the years, the company I went to work for was a privately held business that eventually went public. And then during the 34 years that I was employed there, moving up through the ranks, we were acquired by 4 different companies. And people used to say, "Keith, usually when a company's acquired, they downsize." And it said, "How did you avoid not being part of that?" I said, "Well, I always knew when they were coming to town and I'd plan trips out of town. So I wasn't in my office when they came by." But eventually, the last acquisition was by a company out of the United Kingdom called Great Universal Stores. And it is now one of the largest international companies in the world, and they've expanded way beyond credit reporting. They do a lot of consumer reports, mortgage services, anything that relates to consumer financial transactions. When I started, we were a small privately held company that was a $30 million a year business. And when I left there, we were in 22 different countries, and it was a $4.5 billion company. So I saw a lot of different changes. When my career ended there, I was managing information solutions that would help clients understand how to more effectively use data to make decisions about their own business and about their customers so they could effectively grow their business. It was probably one of the best experiences of my whole life. And the people I started working with at the beginning of that 34-year period uh, still remain close friends. We were more like a family than we were a company. Unfortunately, not many of those folks are left. And, one of my mentors, probably the biggest mentor in my life, was an individual named Larry Smith. And Larry hired me. And I learned a lot about him, from not only how to conduct business, but how to conduct your personal life, family value, personal values, as well as business acumen. And, what we were, I worked for him directly for 20 years. And Larry just turned 90 years old about a month ago. And he's always been active. Larry was Cooperized before there was such a thing as Cooper. He walked every day of his life. He always ate a very well balanced meal, and he always managed and maintained his health in a great way. And I started learning healthy habits from Larry. So that was one part of my career. Before that, I had had several jobs. I worked offshore in the Gulf of Mexico for about a year and a half. I was a directional engineer, where we would be 80 to 100 miles out in the Gulf. And as they drill the well, we'd use tools that would go down the well hole and determine if it was going in the right direction that the geologists wanted it to go toward where they thought the oil was or not. And I did that for, like I said, a year and a half. And that was a great learning experience. But had one child at home, and I'd go out sometimes for 10 days at a time. And then once the survey was completed, I'd come back home. And I found after a few months that I'd only be home for about a day and they'd call me back out. And that wasn't the kind of life that I wanted to lead for myself and my family. That was right before I started selling insurance, and that didn't last long. I eventually ran out of friends and family and thought it would be too hard after that. I got a phone call from a recruiter for a company called Horizon Health. They managed psychiatric services and physical rehab services in acute care hospitals all over the country. And I was talking to this recruiter, and he told me they wanted me to come in and be the senior VP over sales and marketing. And my first comment to him was, "I appreciate the offer, but I think you have me confused with someone else. I don't have any healthcare experience at all." And he said, "That's exactly why we want you. We want somebody who has the sales and marketing experience, but doesn't come in here with any preconceived ideas about how healthcare business should be run." So, they wanted me to help them grow the business, increase the profits, so they could ultimately sell it. And so after 6.5 years, we had doubled the revenue and tripled the profits, and were able to sell the company at a very good premium. And after that closed down, I went to work for a company that's the largest manufacturer of optical lenses in the world. It's called SLR. They're based in Paris, France. Actually, a friend of mine that I helped get a job there ended up getting me an opportunity to go to work there when I was between jobs. And I did that for about a year and a half. And then the guy who was the CEO of the Horizon company that I worked for 6 years called me and asked me to help them in business development to acquire psychiatric hospitals and drug addiction hospitals. So after about 3 months of interviewing back and forth, they told me they wanted me to head up their sales and marketing teams. And I said, well, if you don't mind, I'd like to go around campus and meeting some of your folks and learning a little bit more about what they did. And so after about several weeks, I went back and told them, I said, I don't think I can take the job. And they said, well, why not? I said, well, first of all, you don't have any salespeople. So what am I supposed to manage? And they said, well, we do have salespeople. We have the person who runs a hotel, the person who runs a fitness center, the person who runs a clinic. And I said, they're not salespeople. They have a full-time job. I said, so they said, okay, will you help us hire and train people? I said, I can do that, but your organizational structure is not set up the way it does. It's somewhat dysfunctional and it needs to be changed. And so we had some interesting discussions and went on to work to help them kind of change the way they organize their businesses and integrate their databases from 6 different businesses, and worked out very well. And after 15 years, I actually, after about 14 years is when COVID hit. And as in China, the United States was pretty much locked down. Everybody had to wear a mask. And so I stayed home quite a bit after doing traveling most of my business career. And my wife and I would sit out on the patio and enjoy ourselves. And after COVID, I realized, I guess I can retire. And so I cut back to working 3 days a week and then eventually retired full time. But all of those experiences were amazing. And I learned so much from every one of them.
Yeah, it is true that every experience we have throughout our life and our career, no matter what it is, adds pieces to the puzzle of your life. Now, Keith, a few times during your introduction, you mentioned about faith. So your values of faith, family, and integrity, they really, really stand out. Where did they come from and how have they shaped you as a leader?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, I grew up in South Louisiana, and that part of the country is known for hunting and fishing because it's very close to the Gulf and has a lot of tributaries in and around it. So there was a lot of duck hunting, goose hunting, and a lot of fishing. And when you talk about faith, I always say that if you're out there and you're out in the swamps or wherever you are in the outdoors, and you look around and you watch the sun rise and you watch the sunset, how can you not believe that there is a supreme being that created all of this? And that connection to nature, to me, has always been also a connection to God. And you live your life and you have the kind of principles that talk about your faith in a higher being, your faith in integrity, your faith in the right kind of people. And those are the values that my wife and I have always tried to instill in our children, and family, obviously. And you'll see this one day, that the older you get, the more important your family becomes. No matter how important they are today, as you get older, they become even more and more important.
And Keith, I remember you telling me another interesting story that you had kind of semi-retired after you'd finished a previous company that you're working for. And I believe Dr. Cooper or someone from the Cooper Center actually reached out to you because they had known or they'd heard about you and kind of dragged you out of retirement to help them in their business.
Right.
What was it about your reputation that they were interested in, that they thought we need to get this guy into the Cooper Center? Because the Cooper is a very famous brand, but obviously they needed someone with some experience and someone that did lead with heart to be able to turn their business in the right direction.
Well, it's an interesting question. It took me a while to figure out why they were interested in me, but it was primarily because I had a business background. And no one there really had any true business operating experience. Both Dr. Cooper and Dr. Tyler Cooper had Masters of Public Health from Harvard University. So they were very, very smart, obviously, and very successful. But they didn't understand how to apply that knowledge effectively because they hadn't been in the corporate battles, working for companies, understanding how to build and maintain strong teams and how to apply all of that knowledge in a way that created a different value. There was no doubt in my mind or their minds that they provided tremendous value relative to all the research that Dr. Cooper did at the Research Institute that proved, in fact, for the first time, based upon clinical research, that exercise is medicine. But as far as how to turn that into a business proposition was very different. When I started with the company, the clinic at that time, about 10% of their clients came from large corporations that paid for their executives to go in and get an annual preventive exam. And by the time we finished, probably 4 years into it, 50% of the clients were corporate clients. The money was there, and when you'd make one sale, you'd bring in 5 to 10 patients instead of just one at a time. And again, it's just a different application of a different skill set to effectively grow, to make a great company even greater. You know, it was a very rewarding and enlightening experience.
Mm-hmm. There's that famous book, Good to Great, which talks about that principle that a lot of business owners and entrepreneurs get comfortable because everything's okay. You know, everything's smooth. They've got the right people. They've got the right direction. So the company's good. But they say the enemy of great is good, right? So for people like Chuck and myself, we are always looking to learn from people that have got much more experience than us in business. Like, what advice do you have for new leaders and for existing leaders like us? What are some of the golden nuggets that you would like to share?
It's as far as the way to lead, to build and lead teams and a large employee base, you have to realize is that leadership doesn't have anything to do with control. It has to do with demonstrating value to your team and to your employees, walking the talk. It's not just what you say, it's what you do. It's setting high expectations and requiring delivery of those expectations. And if you do a good job of hiring the right people, you don't have to manage them. Actually, they end up managing you. I always tell my employees that actually I work for you. You don't work for me. My job is to remove any barriers that stand in your way of success. My job is to provide you the goals and the knowledge that will help you be better at what you do. And then you set those goals and expectations and get out of their way. You mentioned you used to have weekly meetings, when you first started off. And the reason I learned about quarterly meetings was what changes in 1 week. I mean, you're not going to see any significant changes from 1 week to another. It's change over time that's the most important things. And the way I created my quarterly meetings, I called them quarterly account reviews, where I'd have each one of my sales directors come in prepared to discuss their top 5 opportunities that they've been working on. I wanted at least 2 of those to be sales they didn't make, and 3 of them sales they did make. And then the group would sit there and they'd interact with each other. I'd say, let me tell you, I faced that same situation with another client, and this is what I did to change their mind. So it was a growing, learning experience, and it gave them an opportunity to shine as well, to talk about what they accomplished, not just a pat on the back and saying, Ed, Chuck, great job, but it's being exposed to people that you work with and respect, to be able to demonstrate the value that you continue to provide. I think, in a nutshell, you have to redefine what leadership is. So many people who leadership positions today think leading by intimidation and fear is the way to go. And that's just the opposite of what's the truth. You don't want that. I'll digress a little bit. As you know, Ed, I do a lot. I started really understanding how to choose the right people during the hiring process. And for years, I looked for minimum of 3 years of this experience or 5 years of that experience and a proven track record. And over time of having some of those work out and some of them became disappointments, I finally realized that what are the attributes of my high performers right now? And it boiled down to 3 main attributes. First is integrity. Second is intelligence. And third is drive, in that order. You can have the second two. If you don't have the first one, integrity, you're going to fail. But if you have integrity to do the right things for the right reasons, and you have the intelligence, even if you don't have experience, you can learn very quickly. And then the drive, you have to be driven to constantly push yourself and be successful, constantly reach higher and higher ability to perform. Those 3 attributes are what I believe make up a solid team that you don't have to manage. I always said I wanted to hire people smarter than me, surround myself with people smarter than me. And for me, that's been an easy job because most people are smarter than me.
That's one thing I love about you is how humble you are. And I want to invite Chuck to jump in here because Chuck does have a lot of experience with sales and mentoring teams and leadership as well. Chuck, based on what you've been listening to there, what's your take on this?
Well, I mean, I have the goat here, so I need to ask a bunch of questions and get better at what I do. That's the whole part of what I'm thinking about. Keith, I've found those same attributes, and I love the way that you laid it out. I'm going to steal that for sure. I go over that a lot in interviews, and I'm finding that a lot of the times I'm trying to find characteristics when I'm interviewing them, and I'm in a situation where most people who I'm hiring, I don't get a chance to meet face to face a lot before we hire them. It's a lot like this. So what are some tricks if you're doing a lot of hiring? You know those 3 attributes are the key, but there are some people that can fake it pretty well, and then when they get rolling, then you find out they don't have those attributes. Do you just quickly cut them, or does that happen to you too? Do you have a really good trick to figure that out before you hire them?
It's basically learning from a number of failures over time. You learn more about what not to do than you do about what you should do.
Yes, sir.
But it's interesting. And I know you and Ed have read all the different management books and the typical interview questions that your HR people are supposed to ask. What are your greatest strengths? What are your greatest weaknesses? Smart interviewers pick up on that real quick. My greatest weakness is I just work too hard. I can't stop. Oh, yeah, right. But I found that if you want to call it a trick, you can, but it's like you start the process out at, Chuck, before we start the interview, I'd like to get to know you a little bit better. So kind of tell me about yourself. Tell me about your family. Tell me about your friends. Tell me about sporting activities. What are you involved in? What do you like to do? Have you ever dealt with any confrontations in your life? Tell me about some of those. And then at the end of that discussion, you say, okay, well, it's great talking with you. I'll get back with you within 1 week to let you know one way or the other. And then Chuck says, wait a minute. What about the interview? I said, well, we just did it. You learn more about a person with that kind of discussion than you will with any kind of processed interview questions. That's what I've found in my past.
And what are you looking for when they're answering those questions? You want to see that they have those characteristics in examples in their lives?
Well, you kind of you learn to pick up on their nuances. Same quality you look for in good salespeople, but they learn to read body language, facial expressions, things like that. And you can kind of get an idea of whether somebody is being honest with you or not, especially if during that get to know you kind of conversation, you find a way to ask the same question in a different manner. And if they answer it differently, it raises a red flag, this person's not being totally honest. My dad used to always tell me, son, he said, if you tell the truth the first time, you never have to make anything up after that. It's the same truth. It will always will be. And so that's, to me, that's one small indicator of how you can, as without really getting to know the person, it's a good way to get a kind of a thumbnail idea of what kind of person they might be.
Perfect. And to go to the point where you've made the hire, what techniques have you used to try to get a non-performer or a low performer to start becoming a high performer? They have all those attributes that you talked about that you wanted to hire to, but for whatever reason, they're struggling.
Well, it's, to me, it's, first of all, you have to set the proper environment for that person to thrive in and to grow in and to learn. And if you have those processes in place, it's easier to measure an individual's performance. I'm a firm believer in very solid and specific goals that can be easily measured. And obviously, for a new hire, you have those reviews more frequently in the first 90 days. And with each review, you say, well, Chuck, these are the goals that we set for you at the beginning. You're not reaching those goals now. As a matter of fact, you're fairly far away from them. So tell me, is there a reason why you're having a problem? And if so, I'll see what I can do to help you. If you're not sure of what's going wrong, tell me what your plan is to try to improve your performance. And then I'll work closely with you on that. And then with those frequent performance reviews, you set collective goals. Say, okay, you're only at 70% of your goal. What do you want your goal to be for the next 30 days? And you have them set that goal. That way they're buying into it because they're the ones who set it. And then you set a few of your own. And then each time you review with them, you go over goals that they've set and you say, okay, good. You've achieved that. Let's move that off and replace it with another one. So you're constantly setting new goals for the individual. What I've found over time in a fairly decent percentage of the time, once you reach the end of that performance review process, probably 80% of the people will self-select.
The other question I would have for those that are listening that aren't in a leadership role for salespeople, because of course we've been very poignant towards that because of our experiences, but there's a lot of transferable aspects of your skill sets and what you're talking about today to leadership in any type of role. Can you touch on that?
I think the same basic principles of success apply regardless of what industry you're in. You have to hire and train the right people. You have to hold people accountable. You have to manage with integrity. You have to be present without being intrusive. You have to coach instead of criticize. You have to celebrate people's success, and not just in a one-on-one conversation, but in front of their peers. I learned a long time ago the value of stack rankings if used properly. You create a report that shows each person's success, each person's performance related to their goals. Very simple math. Your goal was X amount of money. Your achievement is this amount of money. And you post that and update it periodically. And people look at that and they go, I'm at the bottom of this. What do I need to do? And it's a good tool if used properly, not as a criticism, but just as observations. And again, it's after trying so many different techniques, I've gotten back to believe it's a very simple manner in which you interact with other people that is the most meaningful in a successful relationship, which I believe in turn leads to a successful business operation.
That's awesome.
For those that have never heard of Dr. Cooper, a quick introduction. We call Dr. Cooper the father of aerobic exercise. The word aerobics in the dictionary was actually created by Dr. Cooper. He was the first person to have scientific evidence that exercise is medicine and exercise can be more beneficial than actually taking medication. He's still a practicing physician at 94 years of age. He's someone that really, really invests his time, his energy, and his heart into everything that he does. When I was studying back in the early days, physical education and the fitness industry, exercise science, I came across dozens, if not hundreds, of research papers that always had Dr. Cooper's name on them. So he has been at the forefront of the industry for over 50 years. I think it's 55 years now. Dr. Cooper has built the entire organization around the Cooper 8 Habits for a Healthy Life. They are: number 1, get a regular comprehensive exam. Number 2, exercise most days of the week. Number 3, maintain a healthy weight. Number 4, make healthy food choices most of the time. Number 5, take the right supplements for you. Number 6, control alcohol. Number 7, don't use tobacco. And number 8, manage your stress. And the thing I love about these 8 habits, and one thing that Dr. Cooper taught us when I was learning about them, is habits are only good if there's something you can do for the rest of your life. You know, there are so many quick fixes out there, TikTok and YouTube, and everywhere you look, there's the latest fads and needles and things that you can take for quick fixes, but they're not solving the fundamental problems of why your health condition may be as it is. So every one of those 8 habits is something that you should and you can do for the rest of your life. Now, for listeners who are working in the wellness industry, how does the wellness industry grow globally?
You know, first of all, it kind of goes back to what I initially said about knowing the culture of the geographic area where you want to try to grow. What are their needs? What currently exists in that market? Voids can you fill? And instead of using a broad brush approach, I think it's best to have an entry point that deals with no more than 1 or 2 areas of fitness, wellness. That's, I think, one of the mistakes that I've noticed is too many large fitness center try to be too many things for too many people, not taking into account what are the different personalities of the audience that they're really trying to draw.
That's really good advice. I want to talk about mentorship, Keith. You have been a great mentor to me. It's my honor to be able to speak with you and have you invited onto the podcast. One thing I noticed when I spent time at Cooper Center, I would just observe your interactions with people all over the business. The Cooper Center in Dallas, Texas is a massive operation. Like, you've got 5-star hotel, you've got restaurants, you've got swimming pools, you've got children's classes, you've got medical center, you've got spa, and the list goes on. It's a massive, massive beast of an operation. But every single place that you went, I would see how you would interact with the people that were cleaning the hotel rooms, and in the medical center talking to the professors and the doctors, and then in the restaurant talking to the chefs. Everywhere you went, you were adapting, you were speaking differently, but you were always communicating with your heart. And that's something that I observed. And I do believe a lot of people have respected you because of that. Now, speaking about mentorship and respect, you have obviously learnt from people that have got more experience than you. Who are some people that have mentored you that you've learnt from and being able to improve your life?
Well, as I mentioned earlier, an individual named Larry Smith, who just turned 90. As a matter of fact, you know, Larry planned his 90th birthday for a Saturday and had people that he's known all of his life fly in from different parts of the country for his birthday party. And on Friday afternoon, he had a massive heart attack. And so within 30 minutes, he had a stent put in to the artery with major blockage. And then 2 days later, he had 3 more stents put in. And he's in his bed and he says, "Gail, what are we going to do with all the guests here? You need to take them out to dinner tonight." So he was worried about everybody that came in more than he was worried about himself. And he's the kind of person that has maintained contact with people he worked with, people that worked for him over the years. And he's kept that community together by his example and by his silent leadership. And he's someone I've always respected, both as a businessman and as an individual. Matter of fact, 2 weeks after he got out of the hospital, he was in the hospital for like 4 days with a massive heart attack. 2 weeks after that, we went out to dinner with he and his wife, and have gone out several times since then. And he's still going strong. You know, I saw in the newspaper. I'm one of the few people who still get a newspaper. I looked at in the obituaries, and one of our former large clients had passed away. And so I sent Larry a message, said, "Did you see that in the obituary that Ted has passed away?" He says, "No, I didn't, but thanks for letting me know." He says, "I don't look at the obituaries anymore since I'm afraid I'm going to see my name in there one day." But he's one individual. Another one is after Larry retired, he brought in another individual from outside the company with over 20 years in leadership with Xerox Corporation. And Xerox has always been known as one of the leading sales training companies, greatest skills in the United States. And he became the CEO and created a lot of new incentive programs for the salespeople. And, you know, after his first year there, we had a very good year for the company, and he brought his leadership team together at a very nice exclusive hotel and had a private room, and we're all sitting at this oblong table, and he started off toasting everybody. He got up and started walking around the room and laid his hands on people's shoulders. He was standing behind them and told each person what they individually meant to him and how grateful he was for their passion and for their skills and their personal integrity. And he walked around the room, and it demonstrated how much he really showed he cared for his team, but also that he knew so many personal details about each individual. I learned a lot from that experience, and spent a long time trying to really get to know people throughout the organization. You mentioned the hotel. We had a lot of our employees were immigrants from Mexico and Guatemala and El Salvador, and they worked hard to study and become citizens of the United States. And, you know, they were maintaining the grounds or cleaning the hotel rooms. And, you know, I got to know each one of them. And every time I'd see them, I'd ask them about their family by name, and they would just light up, you know, and it's like it showed that somebody in a leadership position truly cared about them as an individual, not just about the job they did, but about them personally. People who feel appreciated will always work harder and do better. They always will. So I learned that from those two individuals very specifically.
Mm. And you are a personal friend of Dr. Cooper. You've known him many, many years. Tell us a little bit about Dr. Cooper for people that don't know him that well.
Well, and I say this very respectfully, Cooper is a legend in his own mind. And, you know, the thing is, you have to know Dr. Cooper to really understand that. He spent so many years being honored by people and complimented by people that, you know, you hear that all your life, and all of a sudden, you know, you really start believing what a big difference you really have made. And he really has made. And as you say, he's 94 years old. And every time I talk to Dr. Cooper, I try to visit with him at least every other week. And he is as passionate or more passionate than he has ever been. And it's amazing that he'll quote all these statistics, all these percentages. And if you fact check him, they're always right. I mean, he has always studied and researched all of his beliefs. You mentioned the eight habits that you need to have to become Cooperized. One of the most important one was, you know, walking, exercising most days of the week. That was based upon a 1989 clinical research study that proved that 30 minutes of moderate exercise most days of the week can reduce all-cause mortality by 58%. All-cause mortality. He proved it, you know, after following a group of the same people over 20 years, watching their health as compared to the other population. So he is the person that coined the word aerobics, and it wasn't Jane Fonda, contrary to a lot of people's belief. But he did coin exercise as medicine. And when he says those things, it's based on factual clinical research, not just his idea. And he's been that way all of his life. And he loves his family dearly, and he shows that love all the time. His wife, Millie, has been his partner in crime for many years, and she's been his biggest promoter. Dr. Cooper always talks very fast. And, from the marketing team, we always say, Dr. Cooper, when you do this interview, try to slow down a little bit. And so he'll usually start off the interview with saying, well, my team tells me I talk too fast, and you have to understand it's the only way I can get a word in edgewise with Millie. So he's just a really interesting guy. It's such an honor to call someone who has really changed so many people's lives throughout the world, to get to know them as a friend, even before that, as an employee, to watch his values and his honesty. He just, he's a true supporter of his family and of his employees. He really believes in them. It's great to watch him.
Yeah, so true. Walking through the offices in the Cooper Center is like walking through a hall of fame. He's got photos of presidents going back decades, movie stars from the black and white era, and everybody in between. And certainly he has been an incredible influence on global health. And when I asked him, Dr. Cooper, why do you want to come to China? He said, because there's 1.4 billion people there. Imagine what difference we can make to the world if we can Cooperize 1.4 billion people. So everything he does, his compass for doing everything, is making the world and making humanity healthier and happier. So truly incredible.
One thing that's interesting about that is that Dr. Cooper will tell you that when he was a very young man, one of his missions was to go to China to improve the health of as many people as possible. And he's had that passion for many years. So it's not just like, okay, let's enter a new market. It's been his mission specifically for China, and he continues to promote that.
Just thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for your stories. Keith, this has been great. I hope that our listeners get a lot out of it. I'm sure they will. And they share this with their bosses.
Awesome. So Keith, we do something here called the quick fire round. It's just a few questions in 60 seconds. The first answer, 1 or 2 words that comes to mind. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. Your favorite wellness habit?
30 minutes of exercise most days of the week.
Nice. A book or resource that changed your thinking?
It's many of them. It's hard to say. As I said, you guys have seen a lot of management books, and maybe one of the observations you've had is they all say basically the same thing in different ways. So it's the basic principles of effective management.
A really good answer to that question would be Dr. Cooper's 20th book, How to grow stronger as you grow older, right?
That's true. That too.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, next question. The most surprising lesson learned from China?
To learn about the Chinese culture, mainly. Most people form their own beliefs based upon the news media in whatever country they're in that talks about another country. And I'll give you an example. One of the 2 trips I made to China with Dr. Cooper, one of the trips we went with Dr. Cooper and his wife, Tyler and his wife, and my wife and I. And my wife was nervous about going to China. She says, oh, I don't know, all the stuff you hear about the people in China, I'm a little nervous. And after spending 2 weeks there, we got back. She couldn't talk about how wonderful everyone in China was and what nice and pleasant and accommodating people they were. So firsthand experience is always better. And all the experiences we've had there have been nothing but good.
Thank you for that. Okay, here's an interesting one. What's one secret talent that not many people know about you?
You know, I've been trying to determine what that talent was. I can't find one.
You are too humble. Keith, as we wrap up, it's really been a pleasure talking to you, not only to learn everything about leadership and leading from the heart, but just catching up on some of the old stories and reliving some of the wonderful memories. It's always great to be able to document moments in our life.
It was a pleasure visiting with you, and Chuck, it was great meeting you. I enjoyed talking with you, and I wish you all tremendous success. And I know you have the same attributes I always look for: integrity, intelligence, and drive. So I think you'll always be successful.
For our viewers and listeners out there, whether you're watching or listening, we'll be back again next week with more stories from the front lines of wellness. Until then, keep striving, keep learning, and keep leading.